More City, Cheeky Beginstein, who's the sporting director, of course, or
Yeah.
director of football, or head of recruitment, or whatever silly title they use. It's all the same thing. He is leaving in June, and Sporting's Ugo Viana is taking over from him. Good choice, Jules?
Yeah, I think it's a really good choice. He's a highly rated sporting director, young, obviously former player, as we know, with a really
Very
good track.
talented number 10.
Yeah, very talented. With great track record of signing, certainly for Sporting Club de Portugal. Gyökeres, of course, is the main one, but they've already found Gyökeres' replacement in Konrad Harder, the young Danish striker. The Bast, I mean, plenty of them. So good. For me, this also screams that Ruben Amorim, who is currently the Sporting Club, the Portugal manager, also highly rated, very close to Ugo Viana, very, very tight friendship there. Could be potentially, if Pep Guardiola was to leave at the end of his contract, at the end of the season, then the Amorim-Viana partnership reunited at Manchester City would make a lot of sense. So for me, Viana is the first step towards a Ruben Amorim arrival at City if Pep Guardiola was to leave.
Wow. So having gone Catalan, they go Sportingista now.
Exactly. Exactly. Portuguese.
Fun fact about Ugo Viana, just a name drop, was in Istanbul for Champions League draw, I think 3-4 years ago, and I'm in an elevator with Nasser Al-Khalifi and one of his servants, and it's like a long elevator up. I go in, I push my floor, and I'm actually staying one floor above Nasser's floor,
Right.
which shows you I'm more important.
Yeah,
than
of
Nasser.
course you are.
And then just as it's closing, and I was slightly chit chatting with him, waiting for the doors to close, and then suddenly, like Ugo Viana comes and puts his hand in the door to keep it open, and then he sees Nasser, and he's like, "Uh-oh, like this isn't just some random schmo.
Yeah.
This is Nasser," and it was really sweet. He introduced himself to Nasser, and he tells him we made, and he says how pleased he was with the Nuno Mendes to Paris Saint-Germain deal
Oh, yeah.
that they completed. And it was just funny because I always assumed these people all know each other, but it was sweet. Maybe Nasser meets so many people. I'm sure he's met.
that's
Ugo
why.
Viana probably didn't remember, but
Yeah.
anyway, I thought it was humble of him. Put
Yeah.
it that way.
Gab, you also love talking about footballers playing too many games. Opta came up with some stats for you.
I'm glad I could have come up with these stats myself if I had a lot of time
Yeah.
to waste
Yeah.
or knew how to write code, which the people at Opta obviously do, and I don't. This idea that everybody's playing too many games, 60, 70, 90, and people love to come up with the fact that City could theoretically be playing 68 games this season, plus the Club World Cup at the end of the season, and poor Rodri, well, not a problem for Rodri because he won't be playing many of these. But we've said all along that this idea of too many games, it only concerns certain players.
Yeah.
And so they actually ran some numbers on this, and Manchester City, largely because they're really, really good, they played the most games last season, most club games. They played 59 games. Second and third were Fiorentina, who played 58, and third were Villa, who played 56. Now, if you play the third most, you play 56 games in 52 weeks less the summers, 42 weeks.
Yeah.
This is not monstrous to me.
Yeah.
And they also found that the vast majority of games in Europe's Big Six leagues, vast majority of teams play less than 50 games. There were 5 teams in the Premier League, where, of course, there's 2 cup competitions, who played fewer than 42 games. And there were 36 teams in Europe's top 6 leagues. So I think that's more than a quarter, who would play fewer than 40 games this season.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting this, I'm not saying it's not important Rodri plays too many games in his health. I'm just saying take a wider view and don't just do this knee-jerk thing about greed, too many competitions. No, there's different situations for different clubs. Gareth Southgate has announced he's taking a year off.
Oh, good for you.
I guess this means we won't see him at United.
Yeah.
Will we see him somewhere else? Because it can be a little bit tricky when you call yourself
Oh, do you mean,
out for a
will
year.
he ever coach again? That's what you mean?
Well, I'm wondering, a year out of football,
Yeah.
if you kind of miss your window there, you get into the Max Allegri hell where you're like, I'm just going to take a year off and wait for Real Madrid to Manchester United to call me. And then nobody calls you.
So
and
maybe
then,
not a top club then, I guess. But maybe he will find some way. If he really wants to coach again, he would just have to accept that it's not a top club and that maybe the project is not that great. But if he wants to coach again, he will be able to, surely.
I do wonder. I understand Jurgen Klopp after 8 years or however many it was, 9 years, whatever. It feels like that. at Liverpool with the intensity, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, you know, feeling worn out, wanting to take a break. Gareth Southgate manages England. The workload isn't quite the same when you're an international manager. Are you a little surprised he just makes this announcement? Or you think he waited, saw that nobody's actually interested right now, and says, "Oh, I'll take a year off. I'll take a sabbatical."
Yeah, it's a bit like Klopp, isn't it? You say a year, but it could be 6 months. It could be less. It could be...
Yeah, but Klopp, I can understand that he'd be tired and worn out. He's been doing
But
this a
maybe
lot.
the pressure managing England for, what is it, 6 years? So, yeah, something like that, a little bit more than 6 years. Maybe it was a lot. I don't know. Even if you're right, there was only, as we said, 10 games a year plus the big competition. So, not so much, yeah. So,
It just feels like outside of qualifiers and Nations League games, which, as we've seen, people in this country don't seem to really care about. Qualifiers are straightforward. You know, you have 3 major tournaments, which I'm sure are very intense and stressful, but the rest of the time,
it's cool.
What do? You have a couple meetings on Zoom, you visit people, you watch football at the weekends.
I mean, that's true. That's true. Nottingham Forest have been fined £750,000 for their tweets after the Luton game last season, when they said that referee Stuart Atwell was a Luton fan. Remember? I think we all remember those tweets. Does that make sense to you? Is it a lot, that fine?
It's, I mean, again, it's
a big fine for a tweet.
It's a very big fine. It's a big fine for a tweet, but you're responsible for your actions. This is really, I think, actually fortunate they didn't get a sporting sanction as well, because it's one thing to say Stuart Atwell's terrible and whatever. It's another thing to say, you say he's a Luton fan, you're saying he's intentionally biased. You're attacking an institution like this. So unless you have evidence that he is a Luton fan and he made those decisions because he's a Luton fan, then you had best be quiet. So I think this is really serious. I think they have to come down hard on them. And I think in the end, Marinakis can maybe consider himself a little bit fortunate. Again, I have no problem saying Atwell's wrong, Atwell's incompetent, whatever. You want to say all that, that's fine. Yeah. But the minute you start attacking his integrity, that's not on. Jules, I'm not a gamer, but even if I knew how important FIFA's deal with EA Sports, but even then, I know how important FIFA's deal with EA Sports and the FIFA video games were. In fact, it was FIFA's single biggest commercial deal at the time. They famously split apart. EA Sports FIFA became FC. Wonder where they got that idea from. And FIFA said, "Oh no, we're going to get our own commercial partner." Apparently, they've announced a partnership with Konami, and it's going to, but it won't be called FIFA. It'll be called eFootball, which is very imaginative. Are you into this? Konami, of course, they used to make Pro Evolution Soccer.
Yeah, the PES game, which, like when we were growing up, was better than FIFA at the time, the EA Sport FIFA. And then EA Sport sort of like blew them away, the competition away, and like PES kind of disappeared completely. Well, it became worse and worse and disappeared. Maybe they're going to just make it better and make it good again. I guess the contract with FIFA means that they will be allowed to have the normal team and names and stuff, which was not always
for the World Cup.
Before. For the World Cup, I don't know about individual countries, clubs, all that I guess is to be discussed, but we'll have to see. But I think it'd be pretty hard to try to catch up with the EA Sport game now. They're so ahead.
It's a franchise.
Yeah, definitely.
French state television channel France 2, which I watched a lot of when I was in France this summer for the Olympics. They're producing a fly-on-the-wall documentary. They have camera crews following Nasser Al-Khelaifi around. If they'd been following around in Istanbul, I might have been in it with Ugo Viana in the lift.
I know, but too late.
Jules, will you be watching?
Of course.
Why is he doing this?
I don't know. I didn't even know until you put this quick hit in. I didn't even know. Nobody told me. I'm certainly won't be in it, I think. But yeah, it's I don't know. Maybe he thinks that everything he does for the ECF, for example, which he's the chairman of, as a chairman of PSG, maybe he thinks that's interesting for people to see behind the scenes a little bit.
So the reason I'm curious about this is that, okay, so a lot of those fly-on-the-wall documentaries, like the Manchester City one, Juventus did one. Did Arsenal do one too?
Yeah.
So it's all or nothing. Okay, I'm going to lift the lid on the secret, right? It's not like the camera crews go in there. They have all access. No. The club or the subject of the documentary gets to decide what's in there and what's not there, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if There's Arteta suddenly farting or like dropping like his food or spilling his food all over himself or falling off a chair that might not make it into the video.
No.
Might. For a state broadcaster, generally, they don't really accept those terms because you're kind of blurring the line between entertainment and news, right?
Yeah.
Most, shall we say, serious media organizations, I think, would say, look, if we're going to do this, we film everything and we decide what goes in there, right? You don't get final say. I'm assuming France 2 would have reached the same deal.
I think so.
And I'm just curious that Nasser would put himself out there like this. You might be really confident that you're not going to do anything embarrassing or silly, or that you can control it. But doesn't he run a global media network of his own?
It's not him running it.
No. But I guess if BN had done it,
I think he would be involved. Yeah.
I find this interesting. I hope they subtitle it for me.
Sergio Aguero has taken legal action against Barcelona, his former club, saying that they owe him 3 million euros still after they terminated his contract back in 2021.
Right. So, look, lawyers and contracts are a thing, and you have a right to do this. But just because you have a right to do something doesn't mean it's the morally, ethically right thing to do. Because unfortunately, there's laws and then there's ethics. Mm-hmm. Sergio Aguero, and look, I'm not a Barcelona fan. I don't want to stick up for Barcelona, as you know. I've been very hard on the club and Laporta on what came before. But this is a guy who was basically injured for 18 months before signing for Barcelona as a free agent. It was a stupid deal at the time to sign someone that's on those wages when you know he's injured. He comes in, there was that other problem. They couldn't register him until the end because of the financial situation. He played a total of 167 minutes for Barcelona, and then they used his injury to terminate his contract.
Yeah.
I know, dude, you have a contract, but you can't argue that contract stopped you from going off to play somewhere else. No, you retired because you were injured, as evidenced by the fact that it's not like he rocked up somewhere else to play.
Yeah.
You seeking this, you may have a right to this compensation, but it also means that you could care less about Barcelona, as in, I'm not saying as a fan, as an institution, because you know the financial situation they're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
This seems really, really petty from somebody who's got a lot of money.
It's a bit disappointing, I think.
I don't know. I'm not in that situation.
Maybe he can do with 3 million euros. You don't know.
Maybe, I don't know why he needs another 3 million. Maybe he does. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? But it just doesn't feel right.
No, I agree.
Okay. Norway, one of the enduring mysteries in football.
Yeah.
How they can be so terrible when they have so much talent. Obviously, no Martin Odegaard.
No.
But you have Erling Haaland.
Yeah.
You had Antonio Nusa.
Yeah.
You have the only living Sorloth in captivity.
That's right.
How'd they get on against Austria?
It was 1-1 at halftime.
Oh, that's good.
Good first half. Haaland hit the post at 0-0. Then Austria scored. Then they came back 1-1. And it looked like we had the game on our hands for the second half. And then the second half, they must have sent the reserve team or the under 18 because it was certainly not, there was no match. And Austria won 5-1. It was a humiliating second half where Arnautovic and Sabitzer,
looks good, doesn't he?
Posh, all of them, they just like toyed with Norway. There was no... But even like a bit of tactical cohesion from this Norway team, they look completely lost on the pitch, wave after wave after wave from Austria. Austria could have scored more games than the 5 that they did. And I think it's a really, really embarrassing defeat for Norway now. And to be fair, it's a group where everybody has 7 points. So Norway on 7, Austria on 7, and then Slovenia on 7, I think. They beat Kazakhstan 1-0. So there's still a lot to play for with 2 games each to play. So it's not, Norway can still top that group of Nations League.
But they can also still get relegated.
But they can still also finish like 3rd. Yeah. So.
Well, they could get relegated too.
No, because Kazakhstan have 1 point. So,
okay. All right.
7, 1. Yeah. So, but yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was just a one-off and they get better next month.
This is an ongoing thing with Holland and Norway. Like
it's just underperforming these teams. Yeah.
We're in an ecosystem where, people joke, oh, everybody qualifies for the Euros. Everybody qualifies for the World Cup. Well, Norway don't.
No.
And it's got to be frustrating for him, obviously frustrating for him commercially.
Yeah.
But
surely with the extended World Cup and at some point the extending Euros as well, they will make it. They have to make it. Come on, it's not.
Norway have been in World Cups before. I can confirm that. I have spoken to people. We know people who played in World Cups for Norway.
Indeed. Gab, when you were where Nedum and I discussed the news about Jurgen Klopp, as you've seen, joining the Red Bull group, before getting your opinion on it, and I think I know exactly where you stand. Kevin Grosskreutz, remember the former Dortmund player who played under Klopp, who now has a podcast now that he retired. Well, Grosskreutz had a lot to say, and not very nice, about Klopp's decision too.
Yeah, and Grosskreutz was kind of the symbol in some ways, like the everyman of that first great Dortmund team of the early 90s, the one with Kagawa and Lewandowski and Nuri Sahin and Mats Hummels and Subotic. Remember Subotic and Weidenfeller? Because he was the guy who I think was like the legit fan and who Klopp elevated and became such a big part of the system. And this story has upset a lot of people in Germany because Red Bull are so hated by fans of many teams, including Dortmund. And they feel betrayed by this. Like, Jurgen Klopp obviously has a right to do whatever he wants with his life. But the same thing, there is a public persona. And if you present yourself in a way, he has spoken out on political views that I think I don't want to describe them for him. I know nobody likes it when I mention the word politics here, but let me put it this way: I think most people would say are not necessarily aligned with the Red Bull organization.
Yeah.
Social views which are not aligned. He spoke out about his views on Brexit when he was living here in England. When you have that kind of man of the people ethos, and then you do something like this, can't really have it both ways.
No, that's true.
People are going to feel betrayed. They're going to react angrily. Doesn't make Klopp a bad person. I hope he gets a chance to explain at some point his thinking, because his role, look, he can just say, look, professionally, Red Bull are the gold standard of multi-club ownership. I've said this many times, there's no club in the world that does multi-club ownership well. Red Bull probably do a better job of it than anybody else. Yeah. He's excited by this and whatever. Probably not the money. He walked away from a lot of money at Liverpool. I dare say he would have made a lot more money had he stayed at Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
But there are other multi-club organizations you could have gone to, right? He could have gone to work for John Textor.
For example,
Just kidding there. So, I don't know. I can see why people have had this.
Yeah.
People in England may not quite understand this because they don't understand the hatred that many fans in Germany have towards Red Bull.
I think Liverpool fans do understand that.
I think, they probably would. Neutrals tend not to, in my experience. So, it does leave you a bit. Hopefully he gets a chance to talk about it.
And you know what? The second game of Leipzig, so not the next game in the league, but the one after in the Champions League is against Liverpool. So Leipzig will play Liverpool, RB Leipzig, where you suppose you'd be in the stand to watch one of his Red Bull teams, because that's what he does now. It will be against Liverpool, which is,
I will bet you a sushi. I know you like sushi. I will bet you sushi lunch. He's not there.
I bet you anything you want that he's there.
Anything at all?
Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah.
All right. We'll see. Chelsea beat Arsenal 2-1 to go top of the Women's Soccer League. Women's Super League, even, it's called here in England.
Yeah.
Jules, tough times for Jonas Eidevall.
Yeah, under pressure a lot. 1 win in 5 in the league. Defeated against Bayern Munich in Germany, 5-2 in midweek before. That defeat against Chelsea now is a lot. And it's more that when you watch them play, doesn't seem to be enough considering how good the squad is to start with. And that they should be right up there with Chelsea and Man City to compete for the title, certainly in the WSL, and then doing well in Europe as well. So, that was a massive defeat, 2-1, as you said. They go 2-0 down, Ramirez. And to be fair, Sonia Bonpastor and Chelsea, really, really good in the first hour, half hour especially. After that, it was a bit more, let's defend and let's keep that lead. Emma Hayes was in the stands.
I bet she enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm sure she
really
did,
enjoyed
obviously.
it.
But very good for Sonia Bonpastor, that start of the season. I'm really happy for her. And then for Eidevall, he will need to turn things around pretty quickly, I think. Ilkay Gundogan released a nice letter to all Germany fans, Gabi, announcing his retirement from international football, which we knew, but I guess that just made it official, right? What do you make of it? Do you like to see that more often?
Okay, so he released it to a newspaper in Germany, which I thought, like, dude, you have an Instagram, put it out there to everybody. But then again, no matter where you put it, I guess somebody's going to profit of it. So,
Yeah.
Might as well.
True.
But it was sweet. It was, and I think he was genuine. Look, I don't always agree with many of the things Gundogan says, but I agree with some of them. But I like people who are honest. I like people who are forthright and open, who are emotional. I think he's entirely genuine when he talks, and he's in the final years of his career. He obviously shouldn't be a part, as I say, shouldn't be a part of this Germany team because
I agree.
Partly for tactical reasons, partly 2026 is 18 months, more than 18 months away. Like you shouldn't put a manager in that position, and he's just going to be a super fan, and that's great. And I think it's good news for Manchester United as well because
Manchester
City. Bad news for Manchester United, actually. I think they're still around because it means you get. You get Gundogan all to yourself, and he's going to be your total focus, especially while Rodri's out. L'Equipe report that Enzo Maresca has agreed to play Wesley Fofana just once a week until January. Jules, what do you make of this load management?
So it was a long article on Wesley Fofana and how he kind of rebuilt
himself. This is the one thing we're taking
after the injury, and I don't think it's just the fact that they are very careful with his injury record. Obviously, as you would, he's not part of the Conference League squad, so he can't play midweek. So there's the League Cup that he could play, but right now he's just missing a couple of League Cup games. So there's nothing in it apart from the fact that they're just very careful. So is Deschamps, by the way. Remember, he was called up for the September international break, and it was decided between Deschamps, the French medical staff, and Chelsea and the medical staff at Chelsea that it was better for him to stay in London, so he didn't travel to France. And
this is what you call a big nothing burger, I think, given the circumstances. But I think what's interesting is this is to do with, I think, lingering fallout of the knee injury he had last year, not the ACL, which obviously stopped him the first time, because I think he's fully recovered from that. No love lost between Luis Suarez and Marcelo Bielsa, whose Uruguay team lost 1-0 to Peru, Jules. They're not doing great.
Yeah, and we know Luis Suarez retired from international football last month in September in that break. Great tribute and reception from the fans, and then he waited a little bit and then gave this massive interview, explosive interview, where he lays into Bielsa for the kind of management that he's put in place since taking over with Uruguay, stuff like he doesn't even say hello. We had to ask him to actually say hello to players in the morning, doesn't talk to anybody, he's rude, all of that, loads of things. And said during Copa America, Suarez saw things that really hurt him, but he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to disturb the national team in a big tournament. And then in this interview, just let go everything against Bielsa and saying that Bielsa is the reason why he retired from international football.
Yeah, he also said that staff were not allowed to speak to the players or eat with the team, which, when you're away at a tournament is just odd because you're all supposed to be a team. And
in the same bubble,
I just find it odd because you're always told in any team, anybody's ever been part of a team, right? You're always told that, like, hey, everybody's important. The kit man's really important. The groundskeeper, the physio, the guy with a bucket and the mop, right? This seems to go completely against it. Now, we know Bielsa is unique in the way he approaches things. It does leave a bit. It does leave a bad taste.
Didn't look for him now at all. Juventus have been linked with Everton striker Dominic CalvertLewin. Gab, what's the logic there? Because I can't really see it.
I guess the logic is that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is out of contract in June.
Okay.
And he's fit. He started 7 games, I think every game this season for Everton. Everton have a new owner who might want to bring in a new striker, I'm guessing. Juventus have Dusan Vlahovic, but their other striker, Arik Milik, is kind of permanently injured. He'll be back at some point. Calvert-Lewin wants a new deal, maybe not at Everton, maybe elsewhere, but you can get him on a free in June. So in January, wouldn't cost too much money. And so somebody got the mandate to sell him in Italy, and I love putting his name out there. I think this is the extent of the logic. I don't think Calvert-Lewin is a terrible footballer when fit. You may not like him. Would you take?
I guess if Vlahovic leaves and you get quite a lot of money, I would not go.
No, not if Vlahovic leaves. He would be there to be Vlahovic's backup.
Oh yeah, as a backup if he doesn't cost you much. But I don't know. It's a bit doesn't do it for me. That's all.
Okay. Well, would you? I'm curious though. In the scheme of backup center forwards, right? I'm going to go back to my favorite subject, which of course is Kai Havertz, who plays center forward for Germany and for Arsenal and scores goals and is good in the air and is nasty, but he's not a proper number 9. Would Calvert-Lewin be a better option as a backup center forward for Arsenal than, say, Eddie Nketiah, who was there last year?
I mean, at least he knows the league. He knows, he knows the Premier League. I think there's a different option there for you as a number 9. You can even play him with Havertz. So I think I just think he'd be good. I think he's a good player. It's just if you're Juventus, I'm not sure if you go and get Calvert-Lewin ahead of other options that you might have. That's all.
But that's what I was driving at. I think he's going to have options in the Premier League with 6 months to go if they decide not to extend him. He's only 27 years old, so he's got some years left. And I think a lot of those big clubs, I would include Chelsea again. I don't think Chelsea should sign him. I don't think they will sign him because he doesn't fit the business model, whatever. But if I'm Chelsea and I need somebody as an alternative to Nico Jackson, I'm better off with Calvert-Lewin than Mark Yu, right?
Yeah, although Nkunku is probably the first replacement.
But Nkunku's very different. He's a very different player, right? He's not the center forward type. So, I don't know. I wish Calvert-Lewin well.
Yeah, of course we do.